Have you ever found yourself driving down a deserted road in the dead of night, feeling an unshakable chill creeping up your spine? Let me share a night I will never forget, a night when I encountered something so terrifying that it changed the way I view the supernatural forever. It all started one particularly foggy evening when I was driving home after a long shift. I have been a truck driver for years, often working late into the night, and I was well versed in the routine of long-haul drives. But that night felt different. As I approached the infamous Midnight Highway, a stretch of road notorious for eerie occurrences and chilling ghost stories, a sense of dread washed over me. The fog rolled in thicker than I did ever seen, enveloping the highway in a shroud of white mist that made visibility nearly impossible. I flicked on my high beams, hoping to cut through the dense fog. It felt as if the darkness was alive, wrapping around my truck like a suffocating blanket. It's just the fog, I reassured myself, trying to shake off the growing unease. I turned up the volume on my favorite classic rock playlist, but the comforting sounds of music did not help to calm my nerves. Instead, my thoughts began to spiral into the countless stories I had heard from fellow drivers about the midnight highway, tales of ghostly figures appearing out of nowhere, phantom vehicles tailing unsuspecting travelers, and shadowy figures lurking in the fog. I had always dismissed these stories as mere superstition, but tonight, I could not shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond my vision. Suddenly, I noticed headlights approaching from behind. I glanced in my rearview mirror, and my heart raced when I saw an enormous, old-fashioned truck. It was unlike any truck I had ever seen, rusted, worn, and moving unnaturally fast. My instincts kicked in as I pressed harder on the gas, curiosity mingling with fear. Who could be driving such a monstrous vehicle on a night like this? As the headlights drew closer, I felt an unsettling chill. The truck was tailgating me, maintaining an unnervingly close distance. Panic set in. I decided to change lanes to let the truck pass, but to my astonishment, it mirrored my movements, sticking right behind me. The road ahead seemed endless, and every second felt like an eternity as I accelerated, desperate to put distance between myself and this ominous vehicle. My heart raced as the truck continued to shadow me, its headlights casting an eerie glow through the fog. The weight of the driver's gaze felt palpable, even if I could not see their face. I glanced nervously at the dashboard clock. It was just past midnight. Why is this happening? I thought, fear clawing at the edges of my mind. The night felt alive with something sinister, and I was trapped in a nightmare that I could not escape. In a sudden surge of adrenaline, I took a sharp right turn onto a gravel road, hoping to lose the truck. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I maneuvered, but the fog thickened, wrapping around my truck like a suffocating shroud. I dared a glance back and gasped. The old truck was right behind me, its headlights cutting through the mist like a knife. I could feel the weight of the driver's gaze, even though I could not see their face. Suddenly, my engine sputtered, the sound echoing ominously in the silence. No, not now, I shouted, panic rising in my chest as my truck began to die. Just then, the massive truck stopped a few feet away, and I could see the driver stepping out, the crunch of gravel under their boots reverberating through the stillness. My heart raced as I locked eyes with the driver. The figure was obscured by shadows, their face hidden beneath a dark cap. "Help me," they rasped, their voice a haunting whisper that made my blood run cold. "Who are you?" I shouted, fear gripping me. The figure lunged forward, and in a blind panic, I flung open my truck door and sprinted into the woods lining the gravel road. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt heavy with fear. Branches clawed at me as I stumbled deeper into the darkness, the whispers of the driver echoing behind me. "Help me," it called, each word dripping with despair. I finally stumbled into a small clearing, gasping for breath. I turned around, but the figure was gone. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my racing heart. But I was not alone. From the shadows, the whisper came again, softer but equally chilling. "Help me, go away," I shouted, my voice trembling. "Leave me alone." The knocking intensified at the edge of the woods, and I could feel my resolve wavering. Desperate to escape, I spotted an old cabin in the clearing. Without thinking, I rushed inside and slammed the door shut, leaning against it to catch my breath. Inside, the air was musty and stale. Moonlight filtered through the cracked windows, revealing dust-covered furniture and remnants of a life long forgotten. I searched for something to defend myself with, my eyes darting around the dimly lit room. Suddenly, I heard a knock at the door, sending a jolt of fear through my body. "Help me," the voice called again. "Who are you?" I shouted, my heart pounding. The door shook under the weight of relentless pounding. "Help me," it whispered again, the voice filled with desperation. Just then, the door burst open, revealing the figure standing in the doorway, backlit by the moon. My heart dropped as I saw its twisted grin, yellowed teeth gleaming in the darkness. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure paused, its expression shifting from malevolence to something akin to despair. Trap must find peace in that moment, I understood. This was not just a malevolent spirit, it was a lost soul, desperately seeking help. Gathering my courage, I took a step forward. "What do you need? How can I help you?" The figure pointed towards the road, a glimmer of hope in its hollow eyes. "The truck must stop the cycle." I nodded, determination flooding through me. "Okay, I will help you." With newfound purpose, I dashed back outside. The fog was still thick, but I ran toward the highway, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I emerged from the woods, I saw the midnight highway ahead, illuminated by the rising moon. I sprinted toward the rusted old truck, which stood ominously in the middle of the road. With a deep breath, I climbed into the cab. As I gripped the wheel, I felt a surge of energy flow through me, as if the spirit was guiding me. I slammed the gas pedal down, and the truck roared to life. As I drove, the landscape blurred around me. The spirit was beside me, directing me home. Suddenly, the scenery changed. I found myself on a familiar stretch of road, one that led me back to town. I was taken aback, realizing I had crossed over the threshold from the midnight highway to the main road. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Finally, just as dawn broke on the horizon, I felt a warmth enveloping me. I glanced to my side, and the figure smiled back at me, a peaceful expression replacing the torment. With one final nod, the spirit faded away, leaving behind a sense of calm. As I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that the spirit had finally found peace. I continued along the main road, the sunlight breaking through the trees, illuminating my path. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over me, knowing I had played a part in helping a lost soul find their way. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the sun was fully risen, casting a warm glow over everything. I stepped out of my truck, shaking off the remnants of the night's terror. The world felt different, lighter somehow. I took a deep breath of fresh morning air, grounding myself in the present. That night changed me forever. Every time I drive alone at night, I remember the encounter and the lost soul. I help find peace. Now, when I see fog creeping in, I just keep driving, hoping others can find their way back, just like I did. But even after that experience, I was not sure if I truly believed in the supernatural. As a truck driver, I'd heard countless stories from my colleagues, each tale more unbelievable than the last. Some spoke of ghosts lurking in the shadows of rest stops, while others described phantom trucks that would suddenly appear in their rearview mirrors, only to vanish into thin air. I had always nodded along, letting their stories wash over me, but never truly investing myself in the notion that these experiences could be real. That all changed on the midnight highway. In the weeks that followed, I found myself grappling with the reality of what I had witnessed. I even revisited the site a few times, hoping to catch another glimpse of that ghostly figure, but the midnight highway remained as quiet and desolate as ever. The fog still rolled in thick at night, and while I could drive past the old gravel road without fear, a part of me still felt that pull, an inexplicable connection to the spirit I had encountered. One evening, as I lay in bed, I found myself scrolling through social media, searching for stories that mirrored my experience. I stumbled across a local forum dedicated to the supernatural, where people shared their encounters with spirits, demons, and other entities. I felt a spark of hope as I read through the posts, wondering if anyone else had faced the same ghostly driver on the midnight highway. That when I found a thread titled "Lost Souls of the Midnight Highway." Heart raced as I clicked on it. The first post described a chilling encounter very similar to mine, an old truck tailing a driver, the voice pleading for help. The thread was filled with responses from others who had experienced the same thing, ghostly figures appearing out of nowhere, their desperate cries echoing through the night. I read story after story, each one resonating with me. It seemed that countless drivers had encountered this restless spirit, trapped on the midnight highway, doomed to repeat their tragic fate until someone could break the cycle. My heart raced as I realized I was not alone in my experience. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to engage with the community on that forum, sharing my own story and connecting with others who had faced similar supernatural encounters. It was comforting to know I was not alone, that there were others who understood the terror and confusion that came with these experiences. We shared advice, theories, and support, forming a tight-knit community bound by our shared encounters with the unknown. But despite the comfort of these connections, I could not shake the feeling of unease that lingered. Every night as I lay in bed, would hear whispers in the wind, as if the spirit of the midnight highway was calling to me, urging me to return. I could not ignore the nagging pull to uncover more about the lost souls and their tragic stories. Eventually, I decided to organize a small group of fellow truck drivers from the forum to investigate the midnight highway together. We planned a trip to the location, each bringing their own experiences and stories to share. I felt a mix of excitement and dread as we set off on our journey that fateful night. As we drove through the fog, I could sense the tension in the air. We shared stories to keep our spirits high, recounting our own encounters and laughing nervously. But as we approached the stretch of road I had driven that night, the atmosphere shifted. The fog rolled in thick and heavy, and an eerie silence enveloped us. Suddenly, I spotted it, the old truck I had encountered that night. My heart raced as I pointed it out to the others. We pulled over, our group huddled together, eyes wide with anticipation and fear.
"Do you think it's really happening again?" one of my friends whispered, glancing nervously around. I felt a chill wash over me, but I knew we had to face this together. "We need to find out what this spirit wants," I replied, my voice steadying. We ventured into the fog, hearts pounding in our chests. The whispers echoed around us, growing louder as we approached the old truck. It felt as if the air was thick with emotions, the spirits pleading for release. "Help us," we heard, a chorus of voices mingling in the darkness. The fog swirled around us, making it difficult to see, but I pressed on, determined to help the lost souls trapped on this highway. I led the group towards the truck, and as we approached, the figure emerged from the shadows, just as I remembered. "Help us," it called again, its voice filled with despair. The group fell silent, and I stepped forward, recalling the connection I had felt that night. "What do you need?" I asked, my heart racing. "How can we help you find peace?" The figure pointed towards the highway, its gaze filled with longing. Stop the cycle. In that moment, I knew what we had to do. Together, we formed a circle around the truck, holding hands. We closed our eyes and focused on the spirit, channeling our collective energy. I remembered the warmth I had felt during my first encounter, the surge of hope that had washed over me. "Let them go," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. As we stood there, the fog began to lift, revealing the road ahead. A wave of warmth enveloped us, and I felt the spirits surrounding us, their presence no longer ominous but rather comforting. Suddenly, a bright light illuminated the truck, and the figures began to dissipate, their faces serene as they vanished into the light. I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me, and I opened my eyes, tears streaming down my cheeks. We stood in awe, realizing we had done it. Together, we had helped the lost souls of the midnight highway find their peace. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the road, I knew that my life and the lives of those spirits would never be the same again. From that night on, I drove past the midnight highway with a sense of calm. I had faced my fears, connected with the supernatural, and helped lost souls find their way home. Every time I hit the road, I remembered the haunting echoes of that night and the spirits I had helped release from their tragic cycle. Now, as I share my story, I hope to remind others that the unknown is not something to fear but rather a part of the human experience that can bring us together. The Midnight Highway is no longer a place of dread for me, but a reminder of the power we all possess to help others, even in the darkest of times.